We often encounter numbers presented in the following way. We might see a sentence that says, Congressman Smith's approval rating is 45%. So this symbol with the 0 above the slash and below the slash, we read that using this word percent. What does that mean? Well, we can tell what it means, really, just by looking at this word. All right, this is a compound of two words. Per we've talked about before. Per just means what it does in English. It means for every. And then cent is one of those root syllables, and it means hundred. So it's like century, or like those parts of a dollar that are called cents. This word per cent, it means for every 100. So this sentence, Congressman Smith's approval rating is 45%, means for every 100 people, 45 approve of Congressman Smith. You know, that sounds an awful lot like a ratio, doesn't it? That's the ratio of people who approve to all people. What this sentence says is, the ratio of people who approve to all people is 45 to 100. This 45% expresses a ratio, but it really only tells us the numerator, right? What's the denominator? The denominator is always 100. A percent gives the numerator of a ratio with denominator 100. But the ratio of what to what? Well, in this example, the ratio of people who approve to all people. In general, we'll have terms that we use to refer to both the people being referred to by this number and the people that they're taken out of. We'll call the first quantity in the ratio the portion, and the second quantity in the ratio the base. This is most easily understood expressed in terms of a proportion. The ratio of the portion to the base is the ratio of the percentage, that is, the number that comes before the percent sign, to 100. Now, different texts use different words to refer to these things. We will try to refer to them consistently, but memorizing these terms is not actually the key idea here. The key idea is what these terms actually refer to. Later on, we're going to talk about how in application problems we figure out what quantity actually is the portion, what quantity actually is the base. The percentage, of course, is always going to be the number that appears before the percent sign. But for the moment, let's focus on describing just what it is that a statement about a percent actually means. So here's the kind of context where we might encounter a percent. We have a situation where the base is a group of dentists that were surveyed, and the portion is those dentists out of those surveyed who recommend Crestor toothpaste. We might describe the situation by saying 85% of dentists surveyed recommend Crestor. What does that mean? Well, that means that percent for every 100 of the base, for every 100 what? For every 100 dentists surveyed, what? 85 for every 100. 85 of what? There are 85 of what? There are 85 dentists that recommend Crestor. So for every 100 dentists surveyed, 85 of them recommend Crestor. Let me give you one of these to try as well. So here's a story where the base are Brian's coworkers, and the portion are those coworkers who think he's helpful. If we see the sentence, only 12% of Brian's coworkers think he's helpful, how would you rephrase that in terms of explicitly stating the ratio implied by 12%? Pause the video and try this now. Okay, so again, we're talking about percent. So we're going to start by saying for every 100. For every 100 of what? Well, the base is Brian's coworkers. So for every 100 coworkers Brian has, perhaps. Let's see. For every 100 coworkers Brian has, what do we have? Well, we have 12 coworkers who think he's helpful. So we might say 12 think he's helpful. That would be a short way to phrase it. We might say 12 of them think he's helpful. We might throw in this only from the original sentence because that's a pretty small number. There are different ways we could write this sentence, but it has to capture this idea that the ratio of coworkers who think Brian's helpful to all coworkers is the ratio 12 to 100.